Two stories of people fighting back against taxes came across my monitors this week. What happened to them? What's in the news with stories on being nice to cops, cops murder a man in Dallas, cops targeting Black and Hispanic people in Brooklyn, an 8-year-old girl strip searched, photos at customs, and CDC sparking a false panic. And in Ask Me Anything on Chinese food, designing a cryptocurrency, what would I tell myself 20 years ago, occupational licensing, and wildlife conservation. This episode is brought to you by Health Excellence Plus, a health share that has saved my family thousands of dollars and can save you money too. Also brought to you by ForkFest, the annual decentralized Libertarian camping event that happens around PorcFest, with no tickets and no one in charge. Also brought to you by my dozens of supporters.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. From the home of the #1 state in the country in economic freedom, according to a report by the Fraser Institute, this is the show where I shoot from the lip to bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at @TheLavaFlowPod. This is episode 147, Taxation is Theft. And it's Tuesday, December 10th, 2019, when there have already been more than 850 people killed by police this year, and the United States debt clock shows us at more than $23,106,800,000,000 in debt. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. Taxes. We all hate them. And those of us who pay them only do so under the threat of kidnapping or death. Oh, and don't forget, taxation is theft. Well, not only libertarians hate taxes, apparently. Many of your average citizens are sick and fucking tired of being robbed at gunpoint by perceived authorities. Two stories that came across my monitor this week point to that exact thing. Average folks getting sick and tired of taxes and telling the government to get the fuck out. First, a story of a man, much like myself, who hates the fact that the majority of his property taxes are going to pay for other people's kids to go to school. And this man, like myself, lives in New Hampshire, although he is not part of the Free State Project as far as I can tell. He's just a guy who is tired of having his money stolen and used for something that he receives no benefit for. A Gilmanton, New Hampshire man has filed suit against the town claiming that he should not be forced to pay the school portion of his municipal tax bill because he has no children enrolled. New Hampshire, it really is like this too. Joseph S. Haas, Jr. of 67 Mountain Road filed a complaint in Belknap County Superior Court seeking $12,952 from the town, claiming that on Halloween 2018, he gave the town's tax collector notice that there is no child nor children attending the local government schools, asserting that the tax bill was an invoice for goods or services received. Haas filed for an abatement with selectmen and was denied. In addition to seeking the return of the education portion of a tax bill, Haas is also asking the court to issue an injunction barring the town treasurer from paying to SAU 79 the monies either illegally and or unlawfully taken in by the town. According to Passay's response to the complaint, Haas's arguments bear resemblance to several other complaints that Haas has filed against the town of Gilmanton and the town of Boscawen in Superior Court and the BLTA, which revolve around the core argument that the municipality's assessment of state and local educational taxes are illegal and or unconstitutional. To the town's knowledge, all of Haas's other cases have been dismissed. Haas, who is representing himself, has requested a jury trial and has asked the judge to allow other taxpayers to join in the case should they so choose. Now, I wish this guy all the luck in the world, but let's be honest, asking our rulers to stop stealing from us is likely a losing battle. Instead, we should just get rid of our rulers. Which brings me to the next story that came across my monitors this week. As Benjamin Franklin, the oldest and arguably wisest founding father, once said, "In this world nothing is certain but death and taxes." However, the people of Amelia, Ohio believe local tax policy and leadership had begun to verge on tyrannical in recent years, so they took drastic action last month to evade the excessive burden of Franklin's second unavoidable reality of life. Disgusted with cover-ups by town officials regarding misuses of public funds, and infuriated by an income tax increase passed by the city council in an unannounced 2018 votes, residents banded together with a single common goal: to trim away layers of government waste. On November 5th, the people of Amelia did the unimaginable to make that happen, voting 843 to 479 to entirely dissolve the 117-year-old village and its government. Fuck yeah. Apparently, Ohio has seen 14 different municipalities dissolve recently. Just under 3 weeks later, the unincorporated community of less than 5,000 had officially dissolved, preparing to be absorbed into neighboring townships Pierce and Batavia. Now, while this is not an ideal solution since they will still be under different rulers, at least they are able to put their rulers on notice. I bet their next set of rulers plays a bit more nicely with them. Maybe. Ed McCoy, a 53-year-old salesman and Amelia native, said that there were just too many layers of government fat. He said the best way to get rid of that fat is to start at the bottom. Apparently, there has been near anarchy in the streets with massive rises in crime, theft, and murder in this former town. Oh, wait, wrong story. That's Washington, D.C. where that's happening, the seat of the federal government. My mistake. I applaud the efforts of these fine folks, and I hope they take that spirit of secession to heart when they are absorbed by another town. Keep seceding until you are left with the individual ruling himself, is my advice.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In Bad Boys news, Attorney General William Barr says police might stop protecting us if we aren't nicer to them. Well, I'll be goddamned. Is that all it takes to get the cops to leave me the fuck alone? And here all this time, I thought I was already pretty much a dick to cops constantly. Barr said they have to stop showing more than they do, the respect and support that law enforcement deserves. And if communities don't give that support and respect, they might find themselves without the police protection they need. Man, that sounds like a fucking threat to me. The assumption that Barr wanted to leave us with is that the same police that the Justice Department honored last week, such as officers who had done things like help break up gangs and rescue a kidnapped baby, were exactly the same police officers who invite outrage and abuse by aggressively intruding on the private lives of citizens, violating their rights and beating them up at the slightest provocation, if not actually killing them. He's trying to flip the one bad apple spoils the bunch metaphor by claiming that our right to be served good apples requires us to eat the rotten ones as well. If we attempt to pick and choose, Barr says we'll get none. Unfortunately for the communities most critical of police, it is extremely hard to get the police to go away, particularly when they're engaged in misconduct worthy of criticizing. Police unions are quick to excuse their worst officers and help them get their jobs back in the rare instances where their misconduct leads to their firing. Be nice to all cops or you'll get no cops sounds pretty much like a threat, but it can also be read as a pipe dream. More likely, bad cops will stick around and continue to do bad things, while fewer good people will choose to become police officers, and we see that every day. Communities that are critical of police are reacting to NYPD officer Leo Pantaleo, putting Eric Garner in the chokehold that ultimately killed him, all because he was selling untaxed loose cigarettes. Their anger grew when a grand jury in the Department of Justice declined to prosecute Pantaleo. They will be angrier still if he gets his job back after being fired, a pursuit that has the public backing of the police unions in his city. From their perspective, Garner was killed for selling loose cigarettes, while the police officer who killed him was only fired and now stands to be rehired and possibly receive back pay. I shit you not. Can Barr not see why that dissonance would make people angry? Does he really expect communities to respect and support Pantaleo? What about the members of the police union that are supporting his attempt to get his job back? The threat of depolicing, which is when rank-and-file officers respond to criticism or departmental sanction by not doing their jobs, is real. But it doesn't always lead to mayhem. The NYPD has, in fact, responded to community outrage by making fewer arrests. Crime continued to drop. Now, Barr has this whole thing backwards. It's the police who need to respect and support their communities. They can start by ridding their own ranks of bad cops. Talk about a pipe dream. In more Bad Boys news, Dallas police officers killed a man by pinning his shoulders, knees, and neck to the ground while he yelled, "You're gonna kill me! You're gonna kill me! You're gonna kill me!" Tony Timpa wailed and pleaded for help more than 30 times. And after he fell unconscious, the officers who had him in handcuffs assumed he was asleep and didn't confirm that he was breathing or even feel for a pulse. As precious minutes passed, the officers laughed and joked about waking Timpa up for school and making him waffles for breakfast. Body camera footage shows first responders waited at least 4 minutes after Timpa became unresponsive to begin CPR. His nose was buried in the grass while officers claimed to hear him snoring, apparently unaware that the unarmed man was drawing his final breaths. The officers pinned his handcuffed arms behind his back for nearly 14 minutes and zip-tied his legs together. By the time he was loaded onto a gurney and put into an ambulance, the 32-year-old man was dead. Now, Timpa called 911 on his own on August 10, 2016, from the parking lot of a Dallas porn store, saying that he was afraid and he needed some help. He told a dispatcher that he suffered from schizophrenia and depression and that he was off his prescription medication. Now, look, guys, this is why I say never, ever call the cops unless you want to increase your chance of death. Police had previously claimed to use only enough force necessary to block Timpa from rolling into a busy section of Mockingbird Lane. In the first minute, Timpa rolls around near the curb, but the video shows a police car clearly blocks traffic about a minute later near the bus bench where the officers had pinned him. Several officers continued pressing his restrained body into the ground. He had already been handcuffed by a private security guard before the police even arrived. He never threatens to hurt or kill the police or anyone. The footage also shows the officers mocking Timpa as he struggled to survive. Shortly after one officer ridicules Timpa's repeated cries for help, an officer notes that he appears to be out cold. They joke that he's merely asleep and try to wake him. They say, "It's time for school, wake up." One officer mimics the teen saying, "I don't want to go to school, 5 more minutes, Mom." They joked about buying him new shoes for the first day of school and making him a special breakfast, laughing loudly. And, of course, this is all happening while Timpa is literally dying right in front of them. Fuck these pigs in the neck with excessive force. Timpa died within 20 minutes of police arriving on the scene, and at least 15 minutes before an ambulance eventually transported his body to Parkland Hospital. As the officers and paramedics struggled to load Timpa's lifeless body onto the gurney, they began to panic, seeing his glassy open eyes and blades of grass stuck in his mouth. One of the officers asks, "He didn't just die down there, did he?" "No, you fucking asshat, he didn't just die. You fucking murdered him." Now, those 3 officers, Kevin Mansell, Danny Vasquez, and Dustin Dillard, were indicted by a grand jury in 2017 on charges of misdemeanor deadly conduct. Following 2 days of testimony, the grand jury's indictment stated that the officers engaged in reckless conduct that placed Timpa in imminent danger of serious bodily harm. But then in March, Dallas County District Attorney John Krezout dismissed the charges completely. Of course he did. Our rulers have to protect their enforcers, by God. This is just yet another tragic case of cop murder and misconduct, and all 3 of the cops involved returned to active duty in April after the criminal charges were dropped by the DA. So, in Dallas, 3 murderers have walked away scot-free and are still patrolling the same streets where they committed their crime, all protected by their shiny badges. As most of you know, I was laid off from my 9-to-5 director of IT job last summer. Among the many terrifying things about losing your job is losing your health benefits. Our family went about 6 months without any kind of health insurance, and the anxiety and worry that came along with that was not insignificant. But after spending dozens of hours researching our options and quickly rejecting the $2,000 a month price tag that came with the options available with traditional insurance, we found Health Excellence Plus, a health share that was a fraction of the cost, and we're glad we did. Only a few weeks after joining as members of this health share program, my wife was diagnosed with a common skin cancer that requires an expensive procedure to remove the cancer and another surgery to repair the damage done from the cancer removal. When this is all said and done, Health Excellence Plus will have saved our family thousands of dollars. And I'll bet they can save you money too. Health Excellence Plus is a health share that meets the requirements of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. A health share is a community of like-minded, health-focused members who have joined together to share each other's medical costs above an amount they can comfortably afford. A health share is not traditional health insurance. It is designed to be a catastrophic coverage for major items, like my wife's surgery. The cost of an average family insurance policy for a primary 45 years old with a $5,000 deductible is $1,450 per month. A Health Excellence Plus $500 initial insurable amount with a healthcare strategy is only $783. Get started saving money today at thelavaflow.com/health. That's thelavaflow.com/health. In even more Bad Boys news, multiple police officers in Brooklyn say they were told by a commander that white and Asian people should be left alone and that they should target Black and Hispanic people. At a police station tucked into an end-of-the-line subway terminal in South Brooklyn, the new commander instructed officers to think of white and Asian people as soft targets and urged them to go instead after Blacks and Latinos for minor offenses like jumping the turnstile, a half-dozen officers said in sworn statements. One of the officers, Daniel Perez, recalled the commander telling him earlier this decade, "You were stopping too many Russian and Chinese." Another officer, Aaron Diaz, recalled the same commander saying in 2012, "You should write more Black and Hispanic people." The sworn statements, gathered in the last few months as part of a discrimination lawsuit, deal with a period between 2011 and 2015. But they're now emerging publicly at a time when policing in the subway has become a contentious issue, sparking protests over a crackdown on fare evasion and other low-level offenses. The commander, Konstantin Chachis, was in charge of more than 100 officers who patrolled a swath of the subway system in Brooklyn, his first major command. Since then, he has been promoted to the second-in-command of policing the subway system throughout Brooklyn. Along the way, more than half a dozen subordinates claim he gave them explicit directives about who to arrest based solely on race. Those subordinates recently came forward, many for the first time, providing signed affidavits to support a discrimination lawsuit brought by 4 Black and Hispanic police officers. The officers claim they faced retaliation from the New York Police Department because they objected to what they said was a long-standing quota system for arrests and tickets, which they argued mainly affected Black and Hispanic New Yorkers. One former officer, Christopher LaForce, said in his affidavit explaining his decision to retire in 2015, "I got tired of hunting Black and Hispanic people because of arrest quotas." As you should. Now look, I've said it over and over again. Good cops quit being cops, period. This leaves the police departments full of racist, abusive, thieving, murdering cops. And this is what we're faced with today. In Do It for the Children news, an 8-year-old girl was stripped naked and searched by Virginia Department of Correction staff after she was led to believe that refusal would result in not being allowed to see her father, who was imprisoned. State policy allows for such searches at the Buckingham Correctional Center in DeWillen, about 60 miles west of Richmond, and other state DOC prisons. The girl was accompanied by her father's girlfriend, who is not her legal guardian. If they refused to be searched, they could have been banned from the prison. Daniel McCallum, executive director of the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice, said, "That's outrageous. It's generally regarded in the criminal justice field that you do not strip search young children. I mean, most adults, certainly most adults who work in the field of child welfare would know better, would know that this is an act of child abuse." The strip search has since haunted the girl, who already suffered from bipolar disorder, depression, and ADHD, said her mother. Her mother said, "She's a minor. She's a girl. She was traumatized. She gets emotional. She breaks down." She's missed school because of it, her mother said. Just after the visit, the girl texted her mom in shock. The girl texted, "Hey Mom, I am so mad the jail had to strip me of all of my clothes. This doesn't make no sense." Her mother texted back just before calling her daughter, "Did they make you take all your clothes off?" She responded, "Yes, all of my clothes off." What the actual fuck? This is an 8-year-old little girl. After taking off her clothes and also being asked to bend over and cough, she was slowly handed back her clothing piece by piece. One of the corrections officers asked, "How old are you, sweetheart?" As if that's an appropriate question to ask a little girl that you have just abused and humiliated, you fucking asshat. I had the awesome pleasure of joining liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians for the 3rd annual ForkFest in June in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire, and I had a blast. I've now been to all 3 ForkFests, and I don't plan on missing a single one. This year, the event at least tripled in size from last year, with tons more people there and several food vendors. ForkFest is a decentralized camping event where no one is in charge. This means there is no ticket cost to attend the event. This also means that you are free to create whatever experience or event you want or would like others to enjoy. You can connect with other ForkFesters via the unofficial Telegram chat or the ForkFest forum at the unofficial website forkfest.party. That's forkfest.party. Keep an eye out for the dates for next year's event, which will likely be in late June. I hope to see you at ForkFest next year. In Homeland Insecurity news, the Trump administration intends to propose a regulation next year that would require all travelers, including U.S. citizens, to be photographed when entering or leaving the United States, according to the administration's regulatory agenda. The proposed regulation, slated to be issued in July by the Homeland Security Department, would be part of a broader system to track travelers as they enter and exit the U.S. The plan has already drawn opposition from some privacy advocates. Jay Stanley, a senior policy analyst with the American Civil Liberties Union, blasted the idea in a written statement on Monday. He said, "Travelers, including U.S. citizens, should not have to submit to invasive biometric scans simply as a condition of exercising their constitutional right to travel." The Trump administration contends in its regulatory agenda that the face scan requirement will combat the fraudulent use of U.S. travel documents and aid in the identification of criminals and suspected terrorists. The public typically has 30 to 60 days to comment on a proposed U.S. regulation. The federal agency then needs to review and respond to comments, a process that can be time-consuming for major regulations. The Trump administration also said in its regulatory agenda that it plans to issue a separate fast-track regulation this month that would allow the entry-exit project to move beyond the pilot status. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which is part of the Department of Homeland Insecurity, has already conducted pilot programs that collect photographs and fingerprints from foreign travelers. The 2018 internal audit found technical and operational problems during a pilot program at 9 U.S. airports. The problems raised questions about whether DHS would meet a self-imposed deadline to confirm all foreign departures at the top 20 U.S. airports by fiscal year 2021. Because, this is what we all need. The federal government having even more data and metadata points for each and every single one of us. Yeah, right. In Never Trust the Government news, the CDC botched its vaping investigation and helped spark a national panic. Instead of conducting a reasonable investigation and giving consumers useful advice, the CDC has been deliberately ambiguous. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention finally identified a primary suspect in the wave of vaping-related lung illnesses and deaths. Examining lung tissue samples of patients hospitalized with vaping-related illnesses, CDC found that 100% tested positive for vitamin E acetate, which is often used to cut marijuana oils. This finding was not a surprise to those who have been arguing that the cause of these illnesses is not the commercial e-cigarette market, but the illicit market for THC vapes. A market that, I might remind you, is only illicit because of government regulations and prohibitions. For the past 3 months, the CDC's data showed a clear pattern. Those getting sick have been vaping illicit or unadulterated THC, the main psychoactive component in cannabis. A tiny minority of patients claim to have vaped just nicotine, but were often found to be lying, most likely due to the fact that marijuana is still a Schedule I substance. It should have been obvious to CDC that regular e-cigarettes were not and could not have been causing these illnesses. Commercial nicotine e-cigarettes have been on the American and European markets for more than a decade and are used by tens of millions of people. In Europe, there is no such outbreak of vaping-related illnesses, nor is there one in Canada. No commercial e-cigarettes have been associated with these illnesses in the U.S. or anywhere else in the world. But the CDC is telling consumers to stop vaping altogether, even though the National Academies of Science, Engineering, Medicines at ASEM says there is conclusive evidence that e-cigarettes are less toxic than combustible cigarettes. According to the Royal College of Physicians, the risks of e-cigarettes are unlikely to exceed 5% of combustible cigarettes. The consequences of the CDC's advice have been devastating. More Americans now incorrectly believe that e-cigarettes are just as or more dangerous than combustible cigarettes. A Morning Consult poll conducted in September shows the majority of people blaming e-cigarettes like Juul for the outbreak, rather than black market THC or marijuana cartridges. And you'd be a naive fool if you didn't think that this was the goal of the CDC all along. Of course it was. The CDC's communication failure has even spilled over into the rest of the world. As a direct consequence of the CDC's miscommunication, India banned the sales of e-cigarettes entirely. Now get this, India has 12% of the world's smokers and suffers 1 million tobacco-related deaths every year. But thanks to a moral panic and mass confusion and a bunch of lies by the CDC, a country that suffers more than most from smoking-related diseases banned the most effective alternative to cigarettes ever invented. This is why government is evil. They are literally putting lives at risk with their illegitimate prohibitions, and they are proud of it. It should be a source of embarrassment that the public would be better informed on this issue if they listened to a vape shop owner or a cannabis website, rather than the nation's top public health authority.
Ask me anything. Roger will answer your questions about, well, anything. Do you have a question for Roger? Email ama@thelavaflow.com or add your question to the latest AMA thread in the Pax Libertas Productions Facebook group.
It's that time again. I'm going to answer your burning questions. Remember, you can ask me your question by adding it to the thread that I post in the Pax Libertas Productions Podcast Fans Facebook group or by emailing me at ama@thelavaflow.com. Or if you're awesome as fuck and you support this show, you can ask me your question in the Lava Flow Super Supporters Facebook group or in Patreon. So let's jump into the questions. First, a couple of questions from Daryl W. Perry. He asks, what's your go-to meal at a Chinese restaurant, not a buffet? I generally go for General Tso's chicken when I'm doing Chinese food, whether it's a buffet or not. I love spicy food, and that's a spicy dish for sure, if it's done correctly. And yes, I know it's not a traditional Chinese food, but I love it. Daryl also asks, if you could design a cryptocurrency, what features would it have? And how would it be different from existing cryptocurrencies? Well, Daryl, number one on my list would be privacy. This is why I generally stick to coins that have good privacy, like Dash, Horizon, Monero, and the like. Number two would be ease of use, which is why I tend to gravitate to Dash over the other privacy coins. And finally, I prefer a coin that I can actually use. I can use Dash at a ton of places in New Hampshire and on the internet. And I'm not talking about things that I rarely use, but I can use it at tons of retail establishments around the state, thanks in large part to a company called AnyPay that's run by a friend of ours, Daryl. And finally, I would add scalability and upgradability to my coin. Dash is proving that they do this as well with their new Evolution that's coming out very soon. They just had an open house on their Evolution last week, and it looks fantastic. So if I had to create my own cryptocurrency, it would be something along the lines of Dash, I guess, but maybe better. Thanks for all the questions, Daryl. My next two questions come from Drake L. He asks, what is one thing that you would tell yourself 10 or 20 years ago? Easy. Save $40,000 and don't waste your time going to college to get a degree in a field that you were already working in and advancing in, but thought you needed a piece of paper for. My last job required a master's degree, for example, but I did the job for over 3 years with an associate's degree that I didn't even need because my skills and experience got me the job, not a piece of paper. Before that, I was in a job for nearly a decade that required a bachelor's degree, still with only my associates. I wasted my time, money, and energy for 2 years for that useless piece of paper. Drake's next question is a follow-up, saying, assuming that the you 10 to 20 years ago may not follow that advice, what is one thing you wish you had done or started 10 to 20 years earlier? Boy, this is an easy one. I wish I had bought cryptocurrency when I first considered it. I looked at buying $100 worth of Bitcoin when it was hovering around 30 cents. Right now, just one of those 30-cent Bitcoins would be worth nearly $8,000. that $100 investment 10 years ago would be worth almost $3 million today. Fuck buying Apple or Microsoft stock. I should have bought Bitcoin much earlier than I did. And that's why I keep buying now, because I'm not going to miss out again. Thanks for the questions, Drake. New supporter of the show, Connor G. asks, first, a quick backstory. SUNY college grad with initial goals stemming from a state high school of one day becoming a landscape architect. Fell in love with a career coming out of college, but now find myself at a loss with gaining a foothold in the occupational licensing market. Roger, what's your opinion on occupational licensing, and do you have any advice moving forward on a career that demands a license to do what you love? Damn, Connor, that is a shitty position to be in, and it's obviously because of government. I guess if you love doing it that much, then do what you have to do to join the good old boys network and get the license, if they will let you. Generally, those licenses only serve to create false scarcity and protect the big boys who got in early and helped write the regulations to keep everybody else out, so it will be an uphill battle to get your license. I would try to get in good with the people who control those licenses if that's the track that you pursue. The only other alternatives I can see would be to pick another career or try to be a landscape architect on the black market. That, of course, carries with it a lot of risks, and I'm not sure I would recommend it. The last thing you need is more police or bureaucrat interaction when they have you in a bad spot. As we've seen in the past, any police interaction could end in your death. Actually, on second thought, there's possibly another option as well. You could find a state that doesn't require occupational licensing for landscape architects and move to that area. Good luck, whatever you decide. The next question is from Jake W. He asks, have you heard of the North American model of wildlife conservation? It's considered to have helped preserve animals from extinction like the American buffalo, pronghorn, elk, and white-tailed deer, through an excise tax on guns, ammo, licenses, and fishing and hunting gear purchases. We can see that unregulated hunting and fishing for meat markets led to severe drops in wildlife populations that came really close to extinction of some species. In a free and voluntary society, how would these species be conserved for future hunting generations? Well, first of all, I've never heard of the North American model of wildlife conservation, but it sounds like a bunch of government nonsense to me. First of all, the unregulated hunting of animals that nearly brought them to extinction was a product of government. It was a tragedy of the commons issue created because the government owns vast swaths of lands in the country that people can hunt on instead of having land all be private property. If all land were private property, I bet you would not have had nearly the same problem, especially when you have to get permission from private property owners to use their property for hunting, or buy some property yourself. Now, this is all supposition, of course, but I think it makes sense. But in a free and voluntary society, where private property rights were fully extended to people instead of trampled on by the government, many people would choose to use their property as a refuge or safe haven for animals. And it would cut down on huge swaths of our country being open to hunting animals on government land. Maybe if we allowed these animals to be owned, and even eaten, they would not be extinct. Can you imagine cows or chickens ever becoming extinct? Of course not. Now, I actually did a deep dive on this topic a couple of years ago in the Lava Spurt episode 24 called the Regulate Elephants Like Cows edition. I think you'll enjoy it. You can listen to that episode at thelavaflow.com/TLS24. Guys, thank you for all of your questions. I'll be posting this week looking for more questions, so make sure to be on the lookout for that so that you can get your questions in. Or you can email me at any time with your question at ama@thelavaflow.com. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite logo picker, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/147. I don't have any new supporters this week, but thanks to all of my awesome supporters, I'm at $245 per episode, or 49% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Thank you guys for all the support, really. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I'm going to be upping the content that I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. Now, I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a donation of as little as $1 a week using Federal Reserve notes through my site or using cryptocurrencies through Bitbacker. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. Again, that's thelavaflow.com/support. I have a new review from I Fly Sky High. He says, the silky smooth, fuck 'em in the neck voice of freedom. So much fucking in the neck, I love it. Not just that, but I also love the aggregation of so many unreported but important news stories. Not only do I enjoy the stories, but I enjoy the delivery, the insight, the emotion, the point of view, all the things. As a Gen X, former reformed police officer who has pretty much had a 180-degree turn on most of my worldviews, Roger is another important voice in helping me clarify, solidify, and understand what it means to be a libertarian in the battle for freedom. Wow, that is a badass review. Thank you so much for that. And also, thank you for the email that you sent me as well. I'm glad you're enjoying the lava flow. Now, folks, this guy is an example of a good cop. How do I know that? Because he quit the force. Thank you for your service. And if you have a minute and you want to hear your review read right here on the show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids are doing it, like I Fly Sky High. Thank you to everyone who has left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.